Morning, everyone. Happy Hump Day, and welcome to the News Agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox. And today I'm joined by the Mirror's travel editor, Julie Delahaye. Now, we're going to take you through the biggest stories and discuss the most important things. And it's the People's Paper Review, so don't forget, you can get into the comments, ask us whatever is burning a hole in your head, and we will do our best to answer them for you. Tell us, are you going on holiday? Do you want to go on holiday? Where are you going? What questions have you got? Julie's the expert, so make the most of her while she's here. So the hot topic of the day for just about everyone is when and if and how countries that we actually want to go on holiday to are going to join the travel green list. A few of us really want to holiday on the Falkland Islands. It's a bit of a schlep to the Caribbean that might get added in the next few days. And Gibraltar's quite nice, but there's not a lot of room for all of us there. And today, the Mirror reports it is increasingly likely that old favourites like Spain, France, Greece, Italy will be left off the travel safe list to go to. So, Julie, take us through it. There's billions of pounds here ready to be spent on holidays by people desperate to get away and drink themselves stupid. So why can't we go and when can we?
So there's like two big factors in terms of where we can and can't go, and that will be obviously what the COVID situation is like in the destination. Especially recently, a lot of Europe was going through a third wave, so a lot of them, it was unlikely they were going to be on the green list anyway. And then it's also in terms of the vaccine rollout, like how successful is the vaccine program? Because obviously it's great in the UK, we've got a great rate of vaccination, but you don't want to go on holiday and still be risking that actually out there people aren't vaccinated and then there's a high COVID rate. So the green list was kind of based on those. I've really simplified it there. I think there are a lot of other factors, but those were the two main things. So when we knew as well, because when the government said they were going to announce the green list, they kept saying it was going to be quite a short one. So the countries they have included do tend to have quite low numbers of cases and quite high vaccine rollouts. But like you say, it wasn't exactly the most exciting list, and so Portugal and Madeira are obviously the biggest ones, I think, for us, that they're the ones that are quite popular anyway in summer, and it's going to be sunny and hopefully things will start to reopen. Because obviously don't forget that if you are going on holiday, there might still be restrictions in the places you're going. I think in Portugal, they have started easing some restrictions. So you could actually be on the beach and go to a restaurant. So that's one of the main things.
There's going to be some risk that when someone who's vaccinated goes on holiday and they want to relax, they've had a hell of a year, or they want to see family or whatever it is, and they're going to be less willing to comply with rules about masks or distancing on holiday than they might do here. And in the country where you're holidaying, they may take a slightly tougher stance on those things than we do here as well, and be keener that anyone who's coming into the country to holiday actually sticks by those rules. So I mean, Nathan there's asking, when do we think the Greek islands will be green from? But I think the issue, Nathan, is when are we going to go to Greece? When are we going to be able to go to Greece and Greece is going to be able to welcome us in such a way that we all feel like we're on holiday as opposed to traveling around in a pandemic?
Yeah, the Greek islands are actually quite an interesting one because they announced this week they're going to aim to have the entire population of just the islands vaccinated by the end of June. They're prioritising islanders ahead of mainland Greece because they know that these are the destinations that Brits want to go to. Exactly, we're a key market for Greece. So, I mean, obviously, whether actually they're successful with it is obviously a whole different conversation. But yeah, they're ones that could be ones that open sooner in the summer. But it depends as well whether the government chooses to separate the islands from mainland Greece in its travel advice. It has done that previously, but that doesn't mean that will be the case this summer.
Yeah, and perhaps something similar maybe with the Canaries or the Balearics would be nice, wouldn't it? Now, Chris asks, which European countries have relaxed COVID entry? I'm not sure any of them have, Chris. Julie, have they, apart from Portugal, perhaps?
A lot of countries have started to reopen, or they're planning to reopen to Brits from May, June time. Again, depends if they're on the green list as to whether you can go. I think the biggest thing will be that of places are saying initially you'll need to be fully vaccinated against COVID, which is both doses of an approved jab, and a lot of them it will be like at least 2 weeks before you arrive. Some countries are saying they'll accept negative PCR test results when you arrive, and then if you can show that you've got a negative result, then you won't have to quarantine. But again, I think it's just going to depend on the COVID situation at the time. I think Portugal has said it will allow for vaccinated or PCR tests. But, all it takes is a wave to hit again.
And we don't seem able to predict those quite. Now, Jordan there's asking about how likely Spain is to go on the green list. If we can bring up the story on the travel story that we've got today in the Mirror, that is talking there about the mayor of Benidorm is saying, we think we can open sooner. That's it, flick through it, right down the bottom of the page. The Benidorm mayor says Brits will be back in weeks. We're hoping to reopen and we will be in the right place for it. There are a lot of countries which have fairly low rates at the moment. But of course, Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance and those who are making these decisions are looking at trends and overall things, and they're not thinking about the money and keeping those businesses afloat. They're thinking about where the next waves are coming from. So how likely is Spain to go on the green list, despite what the mayor of Benidorm said?
I mean, I think their cases are decreasing at the moment. So if it keeps going, downwards, then that's going to be quite promising. Spain is so keen, obviously, to get Brits back. Again, it's a huge market for them. And I think they were saying this week they're looking at potentially even not requiring Brits to have PCR tests because we've had such a successful vaccination rate here. I think, I know it's so rubbish, but it is a bit of a wait and see. I think if their cases continue to decrease and vaccines keep being rolled out, then they could be on by the end of June. But I know it's rubbish, but it really is a kind of you'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Now, keep asking us your questions. Where are you going? Do you even want to go abroad? Or is this all just a pipe dream? Are we being ridiculous? Because the pandemic is continuing. Now, Susan says, you've got a hell of a problem here, Suze, it sounds like. I'm unable to change my flight. Wizz Air refuse. That's probably because it's not off the list yet. So they don't have to change your flight or give you a refund. Is Lanzarote, and I can't afford the tests for an amber country that you have to have. Help me, I've got 3 days to sort it or I lose my money. This is part of the problem, isn't it, Julie? The travel companies don't have to refund you or switch your flights or anything else if you just don't fancy doing it or you can't afford the tests that are extra. So you either pay the tests or, unless your travel insurance covers you, you're a bit stuffed. What can Susan do?
Well, this is quite a surprising one because recently, especially ahead of the announcement, there are travel firms that will let you amend your flights and holiday for free if you were expecting it to be green and it's gone on the amber list. So I'm quite surprised to see that Susan's having this issue. I don't have the answer right on hand. I would definitely still get in touch with Wizz Air because I think you should be able to at least amend it or get some future credit booking. But maybe we can get in touch with Susan after the Facebook Live and see if we can give her a bit more helpful advice.
Yeah, Susan, the thing to do probably if you're on Twitter, contact Julie on Twitter. She's on there, Julie_Delahaye. Otherwise, we can find an email address for you if you get in touch with me. I'm on Facebook, Susie Fleet Street Fox Boniface. So message one of us anyway, and we'll try to get you some answers and help you out there. Now, keep asking us your questions and whatever you're doing with your holidays. Kirsty says, we have a holiday booked in France for October. Do we think we'll be able to go? October.
I mean, I'm really hopeful.
They're talking about more waves after the summer, aren't they?
Yeah, but I'm going to be hopeful because, well, I'm a bit biased because obviously I work in travel, but as long as cases drop and vaccines are going to be such a massive thing, if there is a vaccine uptake, it will make the chance of you going on your holiday more likely. Again, it will depend. Is it on the green list? If it's on the amber list, you could go, but you'll need to quarantine when you're back. So I guess it depends on your own situation as well, whether that's something you'd be willing to do. Depending on who you've booked with, it's worth chatting to them about the possibility that if you can't go, what's their flexible booking policy? Do they have one? A lot of travel companies are prioritizing people that are due to go imminently, but it's always worth having the conversation. But again, it's a bit of a wait and see closer to the time, which I know is a really frustrating answer, especially for everyone who's booked holidays. But it's just
part of the pleasure of a holiday is knowing it's coming, isn't it? And having months of thinking, or buying some nice clothes to wear, or thinking about being in different weather, or seeing family or friends, or linking up again or something, and you don't have that anticipatory joy in quite the same way. And Mark says, how frequently is this going to be reviewed? We're going to Turkey in October, and they want to know ahead of time if they're going to be able to. One of the things you might want to look at, Mark, and those are the rest of us who are talking us, is there are a bunch of vaccine trackers you'll be able to find on the internet. I'm looking at one by the FT at the moment, which says, for example, that France's vaccine uptake is 26.6% for a first dose. It's only 11.8% for a second dose. Right. So if you don't have a very high vaccine uptake in the country you're going to, your chances of having a holiday there decrease. It's still possible, perhaps, but it decreases. The EU generally, Julie, is about, there's 28% have had a first dose and 10% have had a second dose. And this is the problem, isn't it? If you have countries which are more vaccine hesitant than we have been, and there's we've got very high vaccination rates in this country, but you've got more contagious variants around the world now. And unless you have high vaccine uptakes, those more contagious variants are going to cause problems with continuing waves and outbreaks. I was listening to a podcast by the New York Times the other day that was predicting, basically, because the uptake rate in America is comparatively low, you only need sort of 60% vaccine coverage for the original variants of COVID. But now we've got the Kent variant, the Indian variant, South African variant, some of these more contagious ones. You need to have more than 90% coverage in order to properly quash the disease. And places like France, Germany, Italy, Spain are traditionally quite against vaccines, aren't they? They're very, very antagonistic towards it. So they're going to have far more problems with this in the future. So a lot of Brits are going to be thinking, well, I'm vaccinated, I can go where the hell I like. Stuff whether the French are vaccinated or not, it doesn't matter to me, I'm protected. Is that how it works?
I mean, no, not really, but I guess, well, yes and no, because it's going to depend on what the UK government, how they're judging what the risk is of you going at all. I guess that's kind of what this traffic light system is. So Turkey, for example, at the moment is on the red list because the government deems that it's too high risk for travel. So if you were to go to Turkey when the restrictions lift from Monday, you would need to basically come back and quarantine in a hotel, which is £1,750. Now, Mark, I don't want to panic you because obviously, again, October is fairly far away, but they have said the list will be reviewed every few weeks. So again, it's a bit of a wait and see scenario, but they have said things like if for the green and amber list, there'll be like a weird little watch list in the middle. So if your country's on the green list, but it might go amber, they'll let you know. So you can sort of speak to your travel company ahead of time.
So Grant Shapps isn't caught out again like he was before.
Yeah, so it won't be the mad scramble of Thursday morning, you've got 4 hours to get back before you've got to quarantine. It's really tricky. Like I really feel, especially for, like you say, for people who've booked holidays and are excited about them, like it's really rubbish, but hold on a little bit further, especially if you've got trips not like taking place imminently. We've got to be a bit positive, don't we? Like you can't just sit here and hope and think that the pandemic is going to go on forever. So if you've booked your holiday, get excited, but just know that you might have
don't get too excited. Maybe not tell the kids until the night before, sort of thing. Now, Amy says the children have to have the PCR tests. Isn't there an age cutoff? Isn't there, Julie?
I think there is an age cutoff, but I'm not entirely sure. Maybe, yeah. I know that some UK cruisers this summer have said that they'll want, if it's a family-friendly cruise, kids will have to have PCR tests. So, but that's obviously cruises slightly different. I'm not entirely sure. If you've got a holiday book, then speak to your travel company because they'll be able to advise. It might be dependent on your
the travel company or the insurance or something else. Now, but I want to have there's a tiny little story in the paper today I want to show you, which is in the sidebar of this story of the page about travel. And as we can see there, UNICEF says the UK has to share its vaccines if we're going to get back to normality. Now, the UN agency says that we could share a fifth of our current vaccine stockpile and still hit all our targets. Now, the government, the Department of Health there says, we're donating to COVAX, we're providing more than 1 billion vaccines, blah, 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 blah. We're giving £1 billion to COVAX, which is the international effort to vaccinate everybody else. And other countries around the world are giving more, but that's not enough because there's 7 billion people on the planet. COVAX might vaccinate 500 million of them. That's $500 million. That's no good to anybody. And as long as, there are people who are unvaccinated, there will be disease circulating, new variants arising, possibility of vaccine escape, and then however many vaccines you've got in your arm, won't matter whether you want to go on holiday to Greece or not, you'll have issues. And of course, even if you are vaccinated, we don't know whether you might be able to transmit the disease to some extent to some people. And there are some people who are unvaccinated for the reasons of health or age, who then might be at risk because you've gone on holiday and brought something else in. Now, Mike says another wheeze is that normal PCR tests, which care workers take regularly, don't count for these trips abroad. They're insisting on this separate paid for test to fly. And this is one of the problems, Julie, the fact we have to pay so much for these tests. The Sunday Mirror is reporting at the weekend that you can get a family break to Portugal for about 700 quid, but it costs you more than 900 for the PCR tests. When or is the government going to make these a bit more affordable, if not free?
Yeah, so this has obviously been a huge issue because some tests can cost from £120, which is, if you're traveling to green list, you just need one PCR test when you're back. But obviously, if you're a family of 4, that's already like £480. My maths is not good, but it's about £480. And but travel companies are trying to step it up a bit. It depends who you book with, but there are some companies. TUI is offering green packages with PCR tests and testing kits from about £20 per person. I know Ryanair and Thomas Cook and EasyJet have also all secured discounts for their customers. So if you're planning a holiday, it's definitely worth having a look at different firms and what their discounts or what kind of options they're offering. It will cost extra. Like, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, it'll be really cheap, don't worry. But there are ways to make it a bit cheaper if you really do want to travel.
Yeah, and a travel company, you can be guaranteed that they may well increase the price slightly to cover the cost of the tests, but you'll get them provided to you. They'll be there. You won't have to chase around looking for them, probably. Yeah. And they'll be the right test as opposed to the wrong one somehow or another. So it may be worth paying a little bit extra if they're going to be able to do that for you. You can take some of the stress out of it. And Tina says, I don't know the answer to this. Do you have to have one of these tests if you've had both your vaccinations?
Depends on the destination. Some countries have said if you've had both doses, then you just need to show proof that you've had those doses, and that's fine. And some countries have said that regardless of whether you're vaccinated or not, you will need to have a PCR test.
What about when you come back in?
When you come back in, it will depend on what colour of the traffic light system your destination is on. So just to make it a little bit more simple, green list destinations is 1 PCR test, and amber and red are 2 PCR tests. For amber and red, it's day 2 and day 8 of your return. But just to throw it in on the amber one, you can opt to have it on day 5. And if you have a negative result, you can leave your self-isolation early. But essentially, it's 2 tests for amber and red when you're back and 1 for green.
And a unicorn and some jam and stand on one leg and with the shins and see if that works. Amy says, how much are the PCR tests? 150, isn't it?
Yeah, you can get some from, like, it's a budget of 120. But like I said, if you're looking to book a holiday, it's worth looking at the different offers that companies do. We do have roundups of these on the Mirror website, so I can send these over if people...
Yeah, we can put a link to that in the comments, so have a look for those later on. Now, keep asking us your questions about travel and greenness and everything else, but there's another story I want to discuss very quickly before we move on any further, which is yesterday's Queen's speech, which was more remarkable for what wasn't in it than what was. So there were 9 words on social care from the Tories, possibly one of the biggest scandals which erupted in the past year as a result of the pandemic, and it got 9 words. 2 years after Boris Johnson said he had a detailed and fully costed plan for it. There was no word on rent reform. There was restrictions for court scrutiny over government actions, compensation if you get cancelled for giving a talk, and they quietly ignored international treaties and how we treat asylum seekers and refugees and decided they were going to switch that around. Now, I was talking to my mum yesterday about this, and what neither of us could understand, all right, she's a Boris voter and I'm not, what neither of us could understand was the man's got an 80-seat majority. He is literally printing money at present. He could do anything, right? This is a perfect opportunity for a prime minister who's got an idea for something, a big idea, to go, right, I'm going to push it through, because no one could possibly stop him at this stage. Whatever he wants his legacy to be, he could whack it through. He could do whatever he liked, but he's not doing anything. He doesn't have a plan. He's had the Brexit thing, but the whole point of Brexit was it was supposed to get us to a point where we could do something amazing. And where is this amazing thing? Julie, if you had the power, the opportunity, and the spending abilities that Boris Johnson's got, what's the one thing you would do?
Oh, do you know what? Just that question. I'm like, there's not just one thing. There's so much you could give NHS nurses a pay rise. You could help tackle things like child poverty. Like you could just help local communities. And there's so much you could do.
The housing crisis.
Exactly. There's so much you could make such a massive improvement to people's lives. Like the idea in my mind that someone has sort of that green button they can push and they haven't pushed it is baffling.
Yeah, you can understand when it's someone in a position like Theresa May was, with a slim majority and other issues and, you know, constrained on all sides, that they can't do an awful lot of big stuff. But once you are free of this, free of EU bureaucracy, free of spending limits, free of worries about the opposition or anything else, do what the hell you like. And what is it you like to do, Boris? We're still waiting to see. You know, is it just wallpaper? Is that what you're in it for? There must be something more to it. Now, I'll tell you a story. Years ago, I interviewed Ken Livingstone when he was sort of, you know, before he started talking rubbish about Hitler, and after he was mayor, and he was a house husband at the time, and I interviewed him. And one of the interesting things that he said was that when you're in politics, you always claim credit for what the guy before you did, because it takes 5 years, sometimes longer, for things to come down the track, right? If you make a big change. So you don't do it out of whatever you decide to do, the next guy is going to claim credit for it, which is what Boris did with the bikes and with the Olympics. Those were both Ken Livingstone's ideas. And Ken claimed credit for things that happened before him. But the whole point that you don't do it for reasons out of altruism. You're not trying to give your opponent, your replacement, a great idea. You're trying, you've got a big idea. That's why you run for office. You try to push it through. It starts that process, and then you leave office and it blossoms in some way later on. That's how politics works. It's how the system works. And he said Boris's issue when he was mayor of London was that he didn't have anything that he started, which is why Sadiq Khan now has nothing to claim any credit for, because nothing's been coming down the track. Right? Boris claimed credit for all the stuff that Ken Livingstone has started, but Sadiq Khan's got nothing because Boris had nothing. And this is going to be the same problem with the next prime minister, whoever it is, Tory or Labour, anything else. Boris hasn't started anything. There's just promises of bridges and stuff. And there's no big idea. There's no, I want to be prime minister because we must have X, whatever it is, which would be, that would be acceptable to all of us, I'd have thought, whether you vote Tory or not. We've got to have an idea. You've got to have a plan. And he hasn't got one. Now, Mike says the problem with social care is it's easy and popular to say you'll sort it, but it's complicated and expensive to actually do. It's not expensive, Mike. It's a penny on income tax. And it's a million individual tragedies, so no solution is likely to get the votes. He doesn't need the votes, Mike. This is the whole point. Where Boris is right now, he's got a massive majority. He could stand for re-election tomorrow and he'd probably get in. The opposition's in pieces. He doesn't need votes. He doesn't need to worry about the cash. He could just bang it through. If I was a Tory Prime Minister and I was constantly being hit over the head by Labour Party, NHS, Labour Party, NHS, I would want to establish something for the Conservative Party as our legacy for the ages, which would measure up against the NHS legacy, right? I would say National Care Service. Shoot me. It's massive popularity at the moment. Everyone will pay a penny on income tax for that. Get it done. Nothing. Sorry. Anyway, that's my rant for the morning. Taking us up to the end of the show, pretty much. Julie's sitting there nodding. So we're going to have a few more questions on your travel problems later on, so don't go away. We're still going to answer a few more of those. But first, there is some good news and an interesting picture of possibly the worst airline disaster, the worst airline travel you are ever going to see. And here it is. Now, if you thought Ryanair was bad, here's a glimpse of what it's like to be an air passenger these days. You have to be gagged, masked and sedated just to fly in a private jet. So Julie, this is a picture of 3 lions flying between a couple of reserves in the Kalahari in order to stop inbreeding. They're letting the gene pool splash around a bit by sharing the lions out in order to protect the species. And there's a vet there called Andy Fraser who's looking after them during the flight. He's quite brave because if they happen to come round, they each weigh 32 stone and there's no duty-free trolley to calm them down. So is this what we can expect, do you think, when we get back into airports and we have to start travelling again? Are we going to wish that we were the lions because they have a better flight than we do?
Jesus, I hope not. They don't look particularly comfortable. I've been on Ryanair flights with more legroom, but
it's a bit like the London Tube, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit like the London Tube.
Head in someone's armpit.
Yeah, I mean, we know that airports and airlines will be busy, but yeah, hopefully you won't be spooning other passengers like those lions seem to be doing. So
I don't know. I think there's something in it. You know, if we all just got general anaesthetic at the airport and they piled us up and we didn't have to experience any of the hell of actual travel and flight and being on a plane in economy class. I mean, all right, it's still you're literally in cattle class, aren't you? But it would be so much better perhaps than spending 6 hours with someone kicking the back of your seat.
Oh God, yeah.
And arguing and getting dehydrated. Anyway, let's see. Have we got any more questions about travel? Here we go from Shuba. Do you need to quarantine if your flights transfer you from an amber or a red country? You're talking about jumping on and off and making connections. So perhaps you come from a different country than the one you were actually in. If they can read your passport, Shuba, I think the answer is yes. People have tried that one, haven't they, Julie?
Yeah, I think it is the rules for like amber and red tend to be if you've been in that country within the last 14 days. Do double check again, speak to your airline because I'm not 100% sure that you would need to fully quarantine, but I'd be surprised if you didn't.
Yeah, I saw a story the other day about a businessman who switched flights and connected in order to avoid quarantine when he got back, and they looked at his passport and said, nah, and he was in trouble. So I wouldn't try it if you think that there's a risk. Kirsty says, when will these damn tests end? When the virus does, I think, Kirsty. There's no indication, is there, that this is only a temporary measure? This could be for the next few years even.
Yeah, I think travel definitely until we've got the pandemic sort of under control as such. I think travel will be vaccination certificates and PCR tests, and we just have to sort of get on with it.
Unless you go to Skeggy and there's no PCR tests. So that's when the damn tests will end. Sylvia says, no PCR tests on the way if you're going to a green country. So is that right? You don't have to take a PCR on the way out, but you do on the way back?
So it depends on the destination. Some countries will require you to have a PCR test, so you might need one on the way out.
Even on a green list?
Yeah, even on a green list. On the way out, it will depend on that country's own border requirements. I haven't heard of too many countries that aren't requiring PCR tests at the moment, whether that eases as vaccines get rolled out. But yeah, you have to check for the destination in mind. You can find that on the Foreign Office advice, or you can speak to a travel firm. Yeah.
Tina says, I work in social care. God bless you, Tina. And have a PCR test each week. I also have had both vaccinations. If I travel to a country in the green list, would I need to isolate on my return and have a PCR test? It sounds like from what we've said, you definitely need a PCR test and isolate. Not on the green list, though. You don't have to isolate and return to a green country.
On the green list, there's no isolation required when you're back in the UK, but you do need to take a PCR test on day 2 of your return.
Yeah, which in your case, Tina, is unnecessary bureaucracy, but, welcome to the 21st century, unfortunately. Anne, good morning, Anne. How can some airports charge 700 quid each and others 120 or less? I presume this is for the tests. Is that just airlines trying to make money out of us? Because if that's the case, people won't bother to go, especially if they're on a budget and there's 4 people going. How you actually get these tests, if you get them through your travel company, that there'll be an increase to pay for that, perhaps on your package costs, but you can get them yourself for these 120 quid, can't you?
Yeah, I think if you're traveling, you're going to need the PCR test. So for me, to be honest, in terms of booking, I would suggest at the moment you only ever book these things direct through a travel company or airline, because you don't want to risk paying £120 for a test that your airline then doesn't accept. All the airlines and all the travel companies do have FAQ pages where you can see, and they really lay out exactly what they'll be accepting. But I think if you're booking travel, especially at the moment, as it's all kind of, it's kicking off, it's new for everyone, travel's only just really restarting from next week, I would go direct. It's going to save you a lot of stress and hassle, and in some cases it might even save you some money.
Okay. And Jail says, I'm a civil servant and my daughter's in the police department. Are we still to go to quarantine? Last time I checked, Jail, or Charlie, sorry, I forgot your name wrong, the virus didn't care what job you did. I don't think that rules on quarantine particularly give much of a monkeys. As Julie said, it depends on which country you go to and what the rules are about that country when you return. Sophie says, is Ireland on the green list for the UK? The Republic. They've got a low vaccination rate. They're not, are they?
They're not. I don't think Ireland's borders have reopened to tourists just quite yet, but sorry if that's wrong, but it's not on the initial 12 countries and territories, no.
And Boris Johnson and the Irish border is an entirely different issue, I think. Thank you, Julie, for joining me. Thank you, everyone. We hope we've answered some of your questions. We will get some links to some of those stories we were discussing there in the comments, so that you'll be able to check on those yourself, and some of the rules about vaccination and so on and so forth. I think what we've learned basically is keep an eye on the vaccination rate of the country that you want to go to, and maybe don't book one there if you don't have to, and keep a weather eye as well on which companies you're using, and the travel insurance and the rules and regulations about when and how they will change or refund or move your flight for you. That would probably be a good idea. Thank you for joining me, Julie. And I will see you all again, everybody, for some more rants about social care, Ken Livingstone or lions, as and when and how I feel about them, on Monday morning for the next edition of the News Agenda. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.